All right. Welcome to another episode of the Manaverse Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Traplin, and this is the podcast where we talk about building a successful, friendly local game store. Brandon, you're back on. You're back.
I'm back.
Back in
Couldn't
action.
keep me away. All summer long, we were trying to put this together. We were trying to put this together all summer. And
yeah, it's been a lot of like rescheduling and figuring things out and crazy stuff happening in the world.
Indeed. But we made it work. Here we are at last. I'm stoked to be here.
And I am excited. I'm glad that we're having this conversation again because I had a lot of fun the last time. I think we'll have a great time again at this time, especially with some of the things that we're going to talk about. So this is more of a generalized what's going on in the industry kind of conversation. And for the people who are listening to this at some point in the future, this is recorded during the summer of 2023, which will probably go down as a crazy time in terms of change in what's happening. And so I really want to talk about Lorcana, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Everyone says it differently. Whatever the official terminology is, that's the hot button issue right now is this ongoing drama that is Lorcana.
It is the hotness, and when in the ramp up, we knew it was going to be madness. So Lorcana is the Disney card game. Just in case somehow you're coming into this, you don't know what we're talking about. Lorcana is the Disney collectible card game. And on some level, it's like the biggest thing to hit collectible card games since Pokemon. It has that weight. It has that anticipation. It has that brand recognizability. Boom.
Yeah.
And in the run up, we knew it was going to be a tsunami. We knew that. And it's just turned out to be. I was hoping when I just kept waiting for release day. I was like, please, once release day hits and everybody gets their cards, it's gonna be over and we can just go back to normal life. And that did not happen.
That did not happen. No,
it did not happen.
That was just the spark that really started it, because leading up to the release date, people were like, "Oh, it's gonna be okay. Buy your cards, get your stuff, pre-order. Prices will be fine, or like just wait for the second wave or whatever. Don't buy your boxes from the scalpers, stay away from those people because the next batch is coming and it'll be fine." And then, Target and Walmart and those guys, they're going to be selling it super cheap at MSRP. You should buy from them. Like, that's where you're going to be able to get it. But for people who are listening to this at some point in the future and didn't get to live through this time, which was very exciting. The context of the game is like it's like I guess what a way to describe it. It's like a mixture of Pokemon and Magic, and it's a not so competitive version of those kinds of games, right? Like, they're not meant to be high level organized play, or at least it doesn't seem so right now. It's much more kid friendly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what Ravensburger, if you ask me, as I wasn't in the room, I don't know, but if you ask me based on what we've seen from the product, it seems to me like Ravensburger's goal was to make a game that anyone could enjoy, because they have this IP that appeals to an incredibly broad swath of people. You've got like little infants that are involved in this. You've got grandmas that are involved in this. Everyone in the middle is going to want like a Lilo and Stitch card or whatever, right? Yeah. It appeals to a very broad base. And I think that they wanted to make a game that could, like, where you could have a kid that's like 8 years old teach their grandma how to play, and then they could kind of dink around with it at the table, right? Which is what an admirable goal. That sounds fun. That sounds like a fun thing that you might want to do on a summer afternoon.
Sure. And mission accomplished too. Like, at least from what I've seen in my experience with it, is that it does seem like they've made a reasonably approachable and fun, like, introductory card game that does have that appeal to a very large group of people, partly because of the brand and the IP and, just Disney being Disney. But like, the mechanics of the game are simple enough that it is something that almost anyone can grasp and enjoy. And like, that's great. But that's also part of the problem, ironically enough. They made it so good, or at least they made it so broadly appealing, that like everybody wants to get a piece of this thing, which is part of the problem.
Well, there's their story. Ravenberg's position is that they didn't understand what the demand was going to be, and then they went to this Disney convention that they have been holding out in Burbank for the last few years, where it's kind of it's kind of like a trade show, but it's also a convention, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have full convention vibe, but it doesn't have full trade show vibe. And I don't think it's really broken into the consciousness of gamers the way like Adepticon or Gen Con has, but it's a big deal. They hold it every year out in Burbank, and it's just Disney showing off what they're going to do for the next year, right? And so they were like, oh, hey, so we're doing this collectible card game, and these guys, Ravensburger, who make a bunch of our games already, are going to make it. No problem, right? And people lost their minds and were freaking out. There were cards that you could get that had a little icon on it saying that you got the card there. These cards are, of course, now worth buku bucks on TCG Player, etc., because they represent the tip of the iceberg, the most limited of this thing that has turned out to be incredibly limited. Now, Ravensburger has been they do Villainous, right? The board game, the Disney board game. So you can imagine that as a company, they had what they would consider to be internal metrics on how something like this is going to sell. And they would think to themselves, well, this is how this sold, and this wasn't bad. The Villainous line of products is fairly popular as a board game, and you could probably project based on that. So this was a misprojection. They didn't understand that there was this other group of people who were going to ravenously consume this content. In trading card game world, there's a number that gets floated around. I don't know what white paper this came from, but there's a number that gets floated around that says that 80% of Pokemon cards are consumed by people who just collect the cards. They don't actually play the game. They just collect the cards. So if that's the case, you're dealing with a much larger group of people than, for instance, the Villainous board game, right? And then hence, now we have difficulties with supply versus demand.
Yeah, and then it's all magnified as well by the speculative nature of things. And like, I think I don't know what the future will hold, but you can kind of draw a trend line back in time to think, okay, there were a lot of people who were on the ball when Pokemon was released in 1999, and they're like, this is going to be hot. I'm going to make some money on this thing. But most people were just like, oh, Pokemon, that's awesome. I love Pokemon, right?
Pokemon, it's for kids.
Yeah, this is perfect. I remember when it came out as a kid being super excited, not because it's going to be worth a lot of money, but just because like, oh, I like playing card games. I like Pokemon. This is a match made in heaven kind of thing. But like those turned into like insanely valuable cards, right? Then they followed the model of Magic, right? Like if people knew what was going to happen to Pokemon, or what people knew what was going to happen to Magic, in 1993 when they were printing Alpha and Beta, those cards wouldn't have gone anywhere, right? They would have been like, and they go right into my vault and they just stay there, right? And then in like 15, 20 years, these things are going to be worth hundreds of fold what they're going to cost me today, right? Great investment.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is we've seen that, right? People have seen, okay, Magic, they blew up, right? Everyone knows, certain Magic cards are worth an insane amount of money. Same as Pokemon. Everyone knows that first, like, base set Charizard, hollow, blah, 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 gem mint and stuff is worth an insane amount of money.
Right.
People are now like, well, if Lorcana is going to be the next big thing, or Lorcana, whatever, if that's going to be the next big thing, then why would I move these things, right? All of this, there's this big speculative, I should just hoard this stuff, right? If that's the base belief, then there's nobody playing for these, or nobody's playing these cards, right? A lot of these things are just going straight up into they're going into the slab, they're getting graded, they're getting pulled out of the circulation, which again magnifies the problem because there's not much of this stuff out there anyways.
There's not nearly enough stuff to meet the demand. Sorry, this is for a microphone. Sorry. There's not enough to meet the demand, and so so here's the deal with Lorcana, and the word got out on this very quickly, is that the base set was sold out before it was released. Okay, so what does that mean? because sometimes the consumer doesn't know what that means. That means that every box that came out of Ravensburger and went to a distribution hub was accounted for. Every single one. That means that unlike Coca-Cola, right, where like I sell Coke out of my fridge and then I call up Coke and I say, I need another Coke. And they say, it's on the way, right? You can't do that with
one at a
Lorcana.
time.
It's all gone. It's all gone. Every single one, which that means that if you're a speculator, the alpha set is, I mean, this thing is like the rarity on it, the self-reinforced rarity is incredibly huge. You can just take a sealed box and just put it in your garage and just forget about it. You can just forget about it because in 10, 20 years, that sealed box, that box of potential is going to be worth hundreds of times whatever you paid for it, even if you paid more than market price. And that's kind of where we're going with this, right?
Yeah. That's one of the factors that's playing into this is that if even at the things that are right now, you know, the MSRP was like $144 for a booster box or something like that.
Very reasonable.
And then there's a whole discussion around what MSRP actually means, you know, especially when it comes to the average consumer. But that's what it was set as. But the current market price is somewhere between like $400 and $450. Like that's roughly what like you can sell the box for. Those don't stay on the shelves at that price point either. But because of like the expected value of each booster pack, like that's how it works out. And that's insane. Like that's already really high. But you factor in the fact that like even at that price, it's probably still a really good investment. If you're just thinking, I'm going to speculate, I'm going to hold this, it's still probably worth your time to go get one of these things. And I think at least one of the things that I've seen online is the sentiment is like, if this continues, the game will die, right?
Right.
In which we're strangling the hold and nobody can play and nobody can enjoy it. And like the organized play program doesn't really matter if nobody has cards to play with, which in part is true. But that doesn't mean that the value of the set's going to go down because again, collectors, speculators, like they derive their own value in some cases that's not derived from the playability of the cards. So even if the game dies, it doesn't matter that much.
I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I don't have a case study to reference. I mean, I think that like here's my take. My take on it is, well, okay, if there's a choke point at the front, the thing is that there's enough interest in the Disney IP and enough investment that's been put in by Ravensburger that they'll be able to get out of this log jam, right? And then they'll up their numbers. It's not like the game is going to just sputter out in the next 3 months, and they're already adjusting. They're already adjusting expectation. So we know, and this gives those speculators a extra boost on the front end where they're like, well, we know that this product is going to be here in 10 years. And you go online, people are like kind of screeching and being like, but what if the game dies? And it's like, but it's not gonna, right? And that is such a safe bet. That is such a safe bet to say that it's not gonna, right? Now, I see what you're saying. There's a possibility that it could still have collector value because it's like, oh, here's this game that came out and lived a short life, and now you're never going to get these things again. I think I don't know that it retains its radical growth potential in terms of value if that happens.
A living game, successful game, obviously far more important, and like the long-term value of these things will be amplified by that. But I just feel like Disney being what it is, the collector is not caring necessarily about the viability of the thing. They just want the thing, right?
They
just
want the thing.
Certain Disney things are just incredibly valuable, and that if the thing just sort of like putters out, and there's only as much as they put out there for the situation or for the timeline where they were printing it, that like. I don't know if that's how it would play out, but I feel like that would be another amplifying factor, that maybe that would just keep the value going and keeping it rising into the future. But again, part of the problem is looking at the game as an investment versus looking at it as a game. And like there's two different mindsets, right? Because there's a whole series of feedback loops and problems that come with speculation and investment and like the mania, right, of thinking that like this thing is really good and money comes in and then that rises the price and people are like, oh, it is good. And then like that keeps this, you know, insane insane price cycle like going, right?
Yeah.
But eventually that bursts at some point. But in the meantime, right now, what we're living through is there's so much happening, and partly because of there's just so much hype, and it's such a unique restriction, and they so, like you said, like they so underestimated. I don't know if that's how you say it. They underestimated how much demand there would actually be. Like that is like the foundational, point that caused this massive chain reaction.
In the meantime, we're trying to run game stores, and we have people, we have real people, not just like kind of archetypes that we imagine on the internet, but we have real people that are coming into the store. They have kids with them, and they want to buy cartoon cards. Okay. And how is it that we, as the mediators of this experience, are responding to just extremely volatile forces, right? Because and we're discussing this in kind of the run up, right? You have the online community and the mania, and on some level, sort of the backlash that has like manifested towards the idea of the game, towards the people who are selling the game, right? The outcry has been huge. The outcry has been huge. And it's created a lot of tensions between game stores and between people who just want to buy the cards. They just want to redistribute their wealth so that they can get cards. But my thing, since I'm here, since I'm on the show and I have a microphone in front of me, this is just what I want to scream out to the world, so that if somebody hears it, is that there's no winners here. Okay, there's no winners. There's a lot of people on Facebook or Facebook groups or on the internet talking right now about Ravenberg conspiracies to create value, about game stores creating price hikes to fleece customers, speculators rinsing the market. No one's winning right now. This is a terrible situation for all of us. Ravensburger did not want to make a game that you couldn't get. What in the name of God makes you think that Ravensburger sees this as a win? Like, and then as a game store, we are trying to get you the product. We are trying to create communities. But then we have these additional forces that are applying pressure to us. And it's like, so what are we supposed to do, right? Like not only is there this very, I think, kind of interesting and somewhat, I mean, the points of this philosophy are up for debate, but there is a segment of the game store community that says, hey, we invest in like 3 or 4 new card games a year, and 3 or 4 of them go belly up every year, and we lose money on them. And right now, we're kind of trying to make up for some of that, right? We're like on some level, Lorcana is paying for the failures of like My Hero Academia or something, right?
Sure.
Is that fair to Lorcana players? Like, no, but like also when somebody is in a position where they're like, oh, it's a hit and I can actually recover money on this, do they have a certain like Milton Friedman obligation to recover money on this, right? Or do you want to create essentially like a sort of authoritarian compound out of your game store where you're like, next in line, move forward. You may select 2 packs. Those are your packs for the day, citizen. Get out of here. See you tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? There's no winning here. This is a terrible situation no matter how you do it. You know? I mean, no matter how you do it. Yeah, you get if you just say we're gonna sell at MSRP and there's a pack per day limit, then you're gonna get people like these kind of Fagin-like characters coming in with like a whole chain of kids. Each kid has a $20 in their hand, and you're just gonna be like this. You're just going, okay, all right. You know, I'm not stupid. I understand what's going on here. You know.
But hey, they're playing the game, right? They're playing the rules.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure it's all for their fun. I'm sure they're being dragged around to every store in the Valley area because this is what they want to do with their spare time. You know, I mean, anyway, go ahead. I've held forth for quite a bit. What's your retort?
that is the truth, that there's literally no one that is happy about the current situation. And I think there's a tendency for game store owners to pay more attention to the negative voices in their community than to the positive or the generally happy. And like that's a universal thing, right? The people who are going to be angry and negative, they're going to spread that far and wide, even though 9 out of 10 people are totally satisfied and happy with everything that you're doing. You just don't see them. You don't hear from them as often. You know, like it just, you naturally pay attention to the negative stuff. That's an evolutionary thing, because the negative stuff is the thing that's going to kill you, right? The negative stuff was the tiger in the jungle that's going to eat you.
That's a good point.
We pay attention to that way more than we do the positive stuff. Is disproportionate, but that weighs on you, right? So like I've seen a lot of people who are like, I am just so done with this, you know, with answering like angry questions from people like, what do you mean it's this price? What do you mean you don't have any? What do you mean I can only buy 2? Like nobody likes whatever your solution is. There's always going to be somebody who's like, why can't I just buy your whole stock? What are you stopping? Or what do you mean you're just using it for events so you can build a community? That's not okay. I want
even like that. Oh man, it's like
there's no
matter what your solution is, no matter how you put your thumb on the scale to try and use your philosophy of retail to build something here, and that's what we're all trying to do. That's what this moment is the moment where we coalesce the Ravensburger Disney Lorcana community. And it's like there's no right answer, because there's one of 3 choices ish, and then that means that 2/3 of everyone is going to be cheesed about it. You know. And all I keep saying to everyone is, Ravensburger is, I think that they're doing the right thing, which is that they're just printing up more, and then they're going to pump that into the market, which, I don't know that there will be a little symbol on it. I think that's the controversy right now, as to whether there's going to be a little symbol on it that shows that it's a reprint. Because this is going to have a hugely deflationary value on open boxes and on singles. And that's good for people who want to play the game, and that's bad for people who have been hoarding packs, you know?
Yeah. And I think taking the investment part of the game would probably be a general good. I think that would probably, if we could dissuade that for the most part, I think that would be generally good for communities at large. I know that's very difficult and almost impossible to really do, right? Like there's like Wizards faced this a long time ago, right? With the reprint policy. Like they had this massive uproar when they reprinted, what was it? Was it Antiquities? Oh, I can't remember the set, but there was like way back in the, you know, the fog of the early years of Magic, they reprinted a set that was just basically all reprints of all these cards that were at the time really expensive. And there were people who were like, you're going to get sued because I've invested tens of thousands of dollars in these pieces of cardboard. And they basically came up with the reprint policy as a promise to these investors that they will never reprint certain cards, and it'll protect the value of the things that you've spent money on. And I can see why you would do that, but I can also see like how much of a negative effect having that element in a collectible card game brings. But you can also say, to some extent, like in a smaller scale in some ways, a game store kind of benefits from the secondary market, and having cards have, you know, different values based off of collectability and all this other stuff. So it's almost foundationally baked into the model. It's just, it's trouble either way, no matter what.
It can, you know, Authority Games in Phoenix, we have 2 Valley locations, one in Tempe, one in Mesa, and we do a brisk singles trade. We do singles trade for Pokemon, Magic the Gathering. We do some One Piece, and we're branching into Lorcana. We will be doing Lorcana singles trade. And there's an element that is very old to that, right? Like but pre-Magic, the idea of going into a baseball card shop and being a little kid and pressing your face against the glass, and you're like, oh wow, man, it's Pete Rose. He's worth so much money, or whatever, right? Like I get it. These are rare, man. That's his rookie card. Like I mean, it's an old tradition, and of course it makes money. It also costs money. You know, it's also, and there's a lot of card shops. There's a lot of game stores don't do it. They just don't want it.
Yeah.
It's a huge when you take it on, one of the things that you're taking on is an element of goodwill with the community, because you have to buy low and sell high. That's the only way you're going to make money on it, right? And that creates a certain kind of tension, and that means on some level you have to have on staff like a professional haggler who's the meme, the pawn guys meme, like best I can do is $2, you know what I'm saying? It's like a Black Lotus or something, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you have to introduce that into your shop if you want to have that business. And so I don't think it's necessarily an intrinsic part of game store world to have it. It's fine that people do, but you don't have to. You see what I'm saying?
For sure. But even if you don't deal in singles, you do benefit from the fact that there is a secondary market for these cards, because you know, somebody buying packs, they're like, oh, well,
you're right.
I'm gonna spend X dollars on it, and hopefully I get some of that value back, or you know, trade value. Like, it's kind of built in, right? And it's almost impossible to get away from that. And that's just all wishful thinking on my part. I feel like it would probably be better in general, because like that doesn't really exist as an element with, say, board games or Dungeons and Dragons, right? There's no, like, maybe some of like the older first edition stuff has this, you know, like if you found a first edition D&D book or something in mint condition, that would probably be quite valuable as a collectible. But generally speaking, people don't buy like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition books because they're gonna put them away in their closet and they're gonna be worth way more in the future. It just doesn't happen that way.
It sounds funny to even hear you say that, because these things, the depreciation on things like role-playing books and on miniatures games is actually kind of outrageous. And there's this kind of, the only value that comes from them and from the collector point of view is this kind of like implied value of like, oh, well, I remember 1982. I want to have all my books from 1982. But like, I tell people, like, Warhammer is like one of the worst investments you can make in gaming. You pick up the new in-box box set and you walk out the door and your value of it just falls like 25%. You know, good luck.
Car off a lot.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same as buying a car. Good luck trading that cello wrapped box of corn berserkers or whatever for the money you paid for it. It's only worth that much money inside the game store. I personally think that's a better model for games. You know, I understand that sometimes, because all gamers gripe, we all gripe, it's all we do. But like, I understand that sometimes role players, miniatures gamers, we feel like we're on a treadmill. Like, I just bought corn berserkers and now they resculpted them and the way look way better. I guess I gotta get rid of the old ones. I understand this feeling of like, didn't I do this already? But at the same time, the idea that there should be that when Wizards says, oh, we're gonna have a no reprint list, and that part of the hobby is investing, I'm just kind of like, man, I have no interest in that whatsoever. That just sounds so terrible to me. Why in the name of God would you do that? That's just me. That's a personal opinion.
Well, at least in Lorcana, they have stated that there is no reprint policy. Like, everything is free to be reprinted as much as we need to make this thing work, right? There's no like, oh, we're never going to reprint, you know, this particular version of Mickey again. So this one's going to be you know, if you get one of these, it's going to go to the moon, right? No, everything is fair game, which I think is a good move on their part.
Agreed.
You know, assuming they can get their whole printing press rolling to the point where it works and everything is, you know, they find that equilibrium between how much they need to make and how much they need to, you know, versus how much people want to buy. I remember reading an explanation as to why there's this discontent between like the game stores and their customers, at least when it comes to the card game world. And it's because of this backpack trading kind of element that, you know, as soon as you start going into singles and you start trading in singles and the model requires you to buy low, sell high, like you said, you know, you gotta work that was the delta, right? You got to get the difference for that to make sense, because you can't run a business otherwise, right? You've got the overhead, you got employees, you got wages, you got all this stuff that you have to manage, and you need to make a profit. So that's just the model. But every single person who opens a box of Magic is kind of in the same boat as you, because they can trade, they can sell. There's nothing stopping them from doing the same thing. But there is this element of like, well, I could sell this on eBay myself for $50. Why would I sell it to you as the store for 25?
Right. Right.
And there's this like, well, you trying to rip me off? Like, but it's hard to see I guess as a customer, it's sometimes hard to see all of those background costs of like what it takes to even open your doors in the morning as a game store. And they don't see that. So it just feels bad when you're trading your cards to a store, even though it all mathematically works out. And it's not like they're getting super far ahead of you. They're not offering you $2 for that Black Lotus. They're offering you a really fair price, most likely, for that card based off of how their operation works.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the question is to what the fair price is, because we all know that there's chiselers out there. We all know that there's a bunch of guys who are trying to drive hard bargains and stuff. And that's the element to me that is off-putting, and that's where that to me is where like the real tension comes in. Yeah. Like if somebody like to people who go like, oh, I could get $50 for this online. And I do hear people say things like that in the store. And it's like, well, my friend, you just what I would say to you is please get a job in retail and just hold it down for like 3 months. You'll learn everything you need to know about how this works in 3 months. Because if you think you can get a better deal online, then by all means, make the eBay listing. Take the risk of some scammer trying to pwn you when you put it in the mail. Go to the mail, drive to the post office, buy the packaging, which is money coming out of your wallet. Then you got to wrap it up. Then you got to sit there and watch the tracking. Those are all risks and money draining activities that you as the guy don't have to do. That's why you're selling it to me at the store, because then I'm going to do that stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's a fee you're paying to just get money up front, And the fact that people don't see this, that they're like, oh, this card's worth $50, so you should give me $50 for it. It's like, well, then what am I going to sell it for? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Give me a break. Come on.
Yeah, I don't think most of the people are expecting to get full value because I can sell it for 50, so you should buy it for 50, and you can sell it for 52 or whatever. And like that, that's enough money for the store.
Whoa,
that's good.
That's a great margin. I love it.
Exactly. I don't think most people who are doing that transaction think that's the way it works. It's more just there is an element of like emotional discontent that just doesn't feel great when you do it that way.
Yes,
because of we're just not great at comparing costs. Like we're just not really good at that as a people, right? So, but that only fuels the problem of like people feeling bad about how much they're paying for some of these things, and that again, this just all exacerbates the situation when you've got a really compressed or constrained supply and demand that is like 10 or 15 times whatever the thing is on the shelf, right? Like that's the Lorcana situation, and at least that's the the guesstimates, right? People are like, I've seen stores say that they got 5% or whatever of their initial order, right? Like that's how much they were allocated down.
I've heard these numbers. Is very disappointing. That didn't happen to us. We did very well with it, but it's those weeks leading up where you were seeing people posting their emails online, and they were like, "Oh, so sorry, you're getting pwned on this one." And it was just like, "Oh man, rivulets of sweat running down our faces."
Yeah, nobody likes getting refunded off their pre-orders.
Yeah,
like that's again, it's one of those situations that the game store who took your money does not want to give it back. Like, and they want to give you the product that you paid for. Oh. That's what they would prefer to do. Right. They don't want to issue the refund, and the people who made the pre-order don't want to get refunded either, because they would much rather have the thing in their hand. And it's just the unfortunate reality is that the retailer is the face. The person in the game store is the face, the frontline retail worker who takes the brunt of the rage when it's not their fault. Like it's so far back up the chain that no one's going to Ravensburger and really making these complaints. Like the average consumer is not going to Ravensburger and sending them these angry emails. It's always the game store who is the problem.
I would be there. I would not switch spots with whoever's answering the Ravensburger emails right now. I'm sure they're getting their fair share. I think the business that we're in is we're just in the fun business, right? That's what we are. We have our jobs in a certain way is to be these kind of Willy Wonka characters who create fun in our communities. And that word community that I keep coming back to, because these games work when there's lots of people around to play them, which means we got to get people in the same room. We got to get them to get along. And situations like this interpose themselves between our ability to be ambassadors of fun and the people. And I think that's why just another reason why there's just so much bad blood right now. And we're frustrated because we just want you to have a good time. They're frustrated because they can't get the thing that they want. Ravensburger's frustrated that they have kind of mangled this thing from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bad scene, and we can't do our jobs in a certain way. We can't do the thing that we really want to do. And people who are going online and they're writing posts like we're all a bunch of quarks from Quark's Bar, like rubbing our hands together because we get to rinse you. That's just not the case. I mean, that's not who we are, and that's not what we want. You know, that was never the goal for this.
No, every single game store owner would much rather have a near infinite supply of Lorcana to sell to people at reasonable rates. You know, MSRP or better, right? Like they would much rather just do infinite volume and everyone be happy and get the cards that they want, rather than making, you know, okay, like sure, they got a few boxes, they made a couple $100 off of each one, but you know, why sell 5 boxes at like 5x? You can sell literally like maybe 1,000 at a normal rate and just be happy with it, right? That would be way better of a situation.
But like when Lord of the Rings Magic came out, which was a huge hit this summer, and you can say like, oh, it was a huge hit because of the chase for the One Ring. Yeah, sure, that helped.
Maybe,
that helped things. But we sold just draft boosters that there was no chance of anybody getting the One Ring in those. Just flying out the door. Huge hit. It was a thing that people wanted, and there was plenty to give them, you know, and that was great for everyone. People had fun with that set. The game stores, we had a good month. We had a great month based on what was going on with MTG and some other games at the time. Everybody wins. I'm sure Wizards got their pound of flesh. Huzzah! You know.
Yeah, I'm sure the Hasbro investors were very happy with the crossover and everything. It was great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hooray for them.
Yeah. But like one of the interesting things about the whole situation, though, is that like they might have underestimated demand, you know, a lot, but that's still probably the right move. So like, there's a lot of like. Of the two options that they could have gone with, okay, let's you know, print at this level, or let's print at like, let's go nuts and we're gonna assume it's gonna be great. Let's print 10 times as much.
Right.
Just like, what if it just didn't quite pop off the way that it did, right? That 10x could have been like, and now we're bankrupt. And now we're dead in the water and we cannot follow this up. We are putting the business at risk by going to that scale. Like you as a new card game, like how many card games have come and gone at this point in the last like 5 years, right?
Right.
Tons of them. And if they had, you know, really like gone hard on the printing initially, they could have just gone even faster, right? They could have just, again, we made a bazillion boxes. Nobody wants them. They're not worth anything. Stores are left holding the bag because, you know, like they bought the box at wholesale, but now it's worth a quarter of that price. So they don't want to get rid of it and just take the loss. That stinks. So like I guess maybe this is the best version of the two possible like timelines of like, maybe there was one where they completely botched it and printed way too much and nobody's happy again, but now everyone is out a crazy amount of money. Whereas at least this situation, they want to make sales. Like they're out the opportunity cost, but they're not actually out cash or a cash on the product. Like, I don't know. Like I gotta respect Ravensburger for at least like doing the conservative thing, taking it slow. Maybe it's too slow. Maybe that's the criticism. It's just too slow. But at least that path is a long way or a long-term potential future for the game to grow into.
And I've seen some sort of inside baseball stuff about game companies managing IP, right? And I think it's important when you're looking at Ravensburger to remember that they're under incredible pressure from the IP holders to deliver in certain ways, right? All of these contracts where you make a deal with someone have time limits based on them, right? Like you have X from the time that the ink starts to dry, you have X number of months to utilize that contract to make money using their idea, right?
Yeah.
And so Ravensburger had already accepted a ton of risk by doing this, and so I can totally see them looking at their numbers and thinking to themselves, well, where's our break-even point? Like where's the tipping point? Where do we keep it safe and keep the future of our company safe, keep the future of our relationship with Disney safe, right? But also we can build a viable product that people are going to like, that's going to have some staying power, and that's going to sell in volumes that keep it going. I mean, like the math behind that, the risk tolerance behind that is so far beyond what those of us who just sit around at game stores and like we roll a D20 to hit an orc or something and we're like, oh, oh boy, a 16 to hit. But like to be the kind of person who signs off and says, okay, Disney, you're getting a card game in X months. And then I just be drinking my Lanta every single night, So good on them for doing as well as they've done. I take your point completely.
Yeah, and I think also like this is to people who are not game store owners, people who are listening and are just part of the gaming base who are just tagging along. We also have to factor in that this is like their first real crack at a trading card game. Like it would have been different perhaps had like Hasbro gotten the the rights to make this thing a reality, right? They've got the experience, they've got the capacity, they've got a whole base of operations that they've been doing this forever, right?
Sure.
But like Ravensburger did a reasonable job making a card game for the first time. Like they made something that was insanely popular, which is awesome, right? But like that should be a factor of consideration. Like, okay, give them a little bit of leeway, right? Give them some time to figure this out.
It's real nice. Like Ravensburger, one of the things that goes along with their products is that they're very aesthetically pleasing. Like they made all new art. They didn't just copy paste a bunch of stuff onto cheap cards. The cards are nice. They got that environmentally friendly packaging that like reduces cellophane. Even on the booster packs, like it's a really nice product to like interact with. It's very pleasing to interact with. I don't know that someone else would have created that. I don't know that someone else would have made something that is so like artistically pleasing to interact with. So and they've been doing that. Remember the Labyrinth board game? I played that when I was like 6 or something. They've been around a long time. They know how to do this. That's the thing that you go to Ravensburger for, and you're gonna get it. Now we've got, and it's kind of interesting, right? Because now we've got Fantasy Flight is ramping up their Star Wars card game, Star Wars Unlimited. And this is a very interesting kind of apples to apples thing that we can compare when that drops, because again, you have a property that has a lot of cachet. People are going to want it. I think it's maybe cachet that's a little more tattered than what's going on with Disney, but it's something people are still going to want. And it's a company that doesn't really do this stuff that much, but they're doing it. So we'll see how that goes. You know, I mean, and they've been kind of cool in releasing their beta documents and stuff. Have you looked at it at all? Have you looked at Star Wars Unlimited?
I have only heard some of the initial news. I haven't actually looked at some of the internal stuff yet.
Me neither. I'm waiting for when it drops. I just want to see. I just want to see what happens. I want to see where it goes. You know, I
that'll
hope
be a really interesting comparison.
Right, I think it will be, and I'm hoping that what it means is that there's not going to be a Lorcana Star Wars set where they make all of the Star Wars characters into chibis or something. I'm hoping that it's that the way that the contracts between FFG and Ravensburger are structured. It's like, no, FFG gets cards, Lorcana gets, or Ravensburger gets. You see what I'm saying. I'm losing the script. Sorry, but yeah, like I really don't want to see Darth Vader and Maleficent in a deck together. I just don't want to see it. Please.
That's one of the more interesting questions about like the future of Lorcana. Like, what is it going to look like? What are they going to include? Like, and it's funny because you mentioned before that like they did, custom art for each card. They invested, right? Like the way that Magic did originally. They invested in their artwork and they invested in the artists and made sure, depending on who you talk to, but they invested in nice art for the nice cards. So, like,
yeah,
that was one of the things that set it apart initially because not many games could do that at the time. But that became like the thing that almost defined Magic in a lot of ways. Fantastic, awesome fantasy art. Lorcana has got really nice. All the cards look really good. Like the card quality is really high. The art's really pretty. It's good stuff. And they didn't just take screens from Disney movies or whatever and then kind of like just throw it on there. And they could have, right? That's so totally. They could have saved a ton of cash doing that, most likely, instead of commissioning all this original stuff. But they went and they put the money into it and made it happen that way, which is, I think, an excellent idea. But the even just like the mechanics of the game, or like the theme, the whole like it's the ink and you're an Illumineer, and these aren't the Disney characters per se, but these are like illusions, the glimmers or whatever, right? These are versions of the car or versions of the character, the what ifs, right? So the future of like what Lorcana could be is incredibly expansive, right? I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff for set 2, the Rise of the Floodborn.
I've seen
already, like, reimaginings of same classic characters. Like, what if Cinderella was a knight? That kind of stuff. I think that's a really cool way to do it. That's a really interesting. Like, it keeps it fresh, but it keeps it within the same universe, right? But Disney owns a lot of IP.
Oh my
right?
god, so much. So much.
Like, it'd be really interesting to see. Like, I think the idea of like having Darth Vader on a Lorcana card is, funny. Hopefully they keep those two universes separate just because of other licensing agreements. I would imagine that's probably the case.
Yeah.
But it'd be really funny to see, like other like Harry and the Hendersons, Bigfoot, like
I hadn't even considered.
Lorcana.
Like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Yeah, now that, I could get behind that. Honestly, I wouldn't hate that. I wouldn't hate that. That wouldn't bother me at all.
Like, it might be that's the Universes Beyond, 2028 version of Lorcana cards. But I know people do have so much potential.
Oh yeah, and like people keep talking about when are they going to do DuckTales? When are they going to do Tailspin? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I loved that stuff when I was a kid. I loved it, and I think that when they finally start mining some of those properties from like 30 years ago. I mean, that's 30 years ago. They have, like you were just saying, they have so much, like the capacity for variety and to create kind of like pleasing, nostalgic visits to an experience that you had when you were a kid. Just infinite. I mean, so I think that the game has legs. I think that people keep like, oh, scalpers are gonna destroy it. Nah. I'll see you in 10 years. We can have this conversation again.
Yeah. No, I don't think the game's gonna go anywhere. I think the game is solid. I think the team behind it is good. They put out a quality product. I think they're working out the kinks right now. They're figuring out, okay, what do we need to do to make sure that this, rolls out steadily and everybody kind of eventually becomes happy with the way things are. They're trying to work that out. And I think they're learning their lesson the hard way really fast. But unfortunately, again, not most consumers, most card game players do not know the mechanics of how the game gets made. Not really, right? They don't have no idea how long that supply chain is and what that lead time looks like, right? And they're just like, well, you just print more cards. How hard could it be, right? Well, no, like there's only so many printing presses. There's only so many companies who can produce your card, and they've got everything booked up for months and months based off of every other card game production company. Like, you can only buy so much space to get these things off the rolls, right? Like, the card game was released. Okay, I gotta remember all the dates. I should have these in front of me.
It was July, right? No, or was it August?
No, it was like August 24th or something like that. It's only been a little while. So but the card game, it was like August 14th, I believe. And then it was like September 1st, it hit mass. That's when it hit Target and hit Walmart and that kind of thing. LGS has had a 2-week window to, sell the product to the community. And as far as we know, that's going to continue into the future. Every set, LGSs are going to have their 2-week sale window. But initially they got super allocated, and everyone was thinking that, Target's going to have hundreds of boxes, and that's where all of the stuff went. But the reality was they actually got less than what the hobby channel did. Overall, they got considerably less than what like all game stores combined got. That again is going to be the model going forward, at least from what we understand right now, from what the Ravensburger said. The next wave or like the reprint for the first set was supposed to hit around the same time as it was coming into the mass channel. Like game stores were supposed to get like about a month ago. They're supposed to get another wave of set 1, but that got pushed back until sometime in October. We still don't really know what that situation necessarily is going to look like. Numbers wise, there's still lots of vagaries. But like,
it's my understanding that number is unbelievably low. So
yeah, it's like you're going to get the same or less than what you got last time. It's not like it's going to be all of a sudden this infinite number.
Right.
But also, at least from what we've heard, because people are like, well, what is going on, right? They're trying to make it so that they will be reprinting wave 1 or set 1. They will have more product eventually, but that might not be until spring 2024, right? We're still talking 6 months out, and that's because of the reality of just how long it takes to get the stuff created. But eventually that will settle. Eventually they will find that equilibrium.
And spring 2024 is not that long from now. Like we're all in a tizzy right now, and I understand how it is when one of your games is grinding along and it feels, if you have feel bads for it, I understand how that can seem interminable. But like in a couple years, none of us will remember this. We'll remember the kerfuffle, but like it will all seem very remote and like inconsequential, because it actually is. You're gonna get your cards. They're coming out.
Yeah. So if you're really feeling like you've just been, like you wanted this thing, it just didn't happen. If you're in that camp and you're angry, like realize that eventually this will work out and you will get what you want. You will get at a reasonable price. You might just have to wait a little bit longer than you initially thought. So everyone just needs to chill out, and like that's part of it.
And you know what?
It's the same kind of thing. Eventually, the negative voices will calm down. Like the fury won't be there. Take it with a grain of salt anyways, because it's not your fault. Like you got to do what you got to do to make the business work. If you got to sell, and you got to sell at a certain rate, like I have a lot of sympathy for the stores that like the market rate is this. Make my money while I can. Like I get it. Whatever path you choose, know that some people are not going to be happy, but do the thing that you got to do to take care of your business to make sure that it's still going to be there for 2, 3, 4 years. When the community finally wants the thing that you have to sell.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. It's a tough spot, but like I feel like the future is bright when it comes to Lorcana. I think if something catastrophic doesn't happen, this thing is gonna it's gonna hammer out the the imperfections in their process. They'll get there eventually, and in the meantime, enjoy it when you can, right? Like, or play something else. Like it's not that hard. There's a huge wide world of other games to get into. Like
One Piece, the 6 months ago was having real problems meeting supply and demand pressures. Seems to have evened itself out. A reprint of Pillars of Strength, I think, just came out, and then the new Kingdom of Intrigue. I can't remember the names. I'm sorry. I actually kind of collect One Piece, and I just can't remember the names. They all are kind of similar to me, but the One Piece is on track now, and the One Piece market being completely gridlocked that was 6 months ago is now over, right? And now we have this new thing that's gridlocked, and we can all wring our hands about, but One Piece is a great game, and the Netflix show is really fun, and so play some One Piece. Market value is the same as MSRP on those packs right now at your game store. Plenty of them.
So many great options.
So many.
But as a store owner, so like store owners thing, we've been having most of this conversation directed towards the consumer, towards the person who's like, I want my cards. I want to play my cards. As a store owner who's listening to this, what would you tell them in how to move forward? How should they respond to the situation and make the most out of whatever they do get? What is your recommendation?
I mean, my recommendation, and I'm a marketer. I'm not an owner. I'm a marketer. And my whole job, and a lot of people don't understand this about marketing. My whole job is to get you into the store. It's to get someone into the store. And then when I have got someone across the threshold, I'm passing the baton to you to create an amazing customer service experience and to sell product. All right. So if you're a store owner, right now is a time to be making the very best community experiences that you can make. And I don't know what that looks like in terms of what you have on hand. All right. But you're going to have a lot more resources in 6 months. And right now it's time for a little bit of kind of sweat equity, kind of elbow grease, a little bit of kind of DIY thinking about how do I take a situation that feels very crass, very consumerist, very kind of late stage capitalism, and how do I take that? How do I create a barrier between the person that's in my store experiencing those feelings? And and this is gonna sound corny because it's Disney and shit, but how do I make this magical? How do I make this magical? Because every kid who is popping packs for the first time or who's building decks and meeting new people for the first time, they will remember this. They will remember this for decades. I'm this is what we do. This is what we do. So that is the thing that I think we need to focus on and that we forget about because of all this noise and all these pictures of empty Target racks and stuff, is that it's about coming into the game store and meeting people and having fun,
Yeah. So make as great an experience as you can in the store for people that are with you, that want to be with you, that want to participate and play and have fun. Make that as great as you can.
Yeah.
And I think another just general piece of advice, I know it's challenging because so much of what we do happens online now. You just kind of have to be plugged in some sense for that to work. But stop paying attention. I can't remember what somebody said it in a thread recently, but one of the most important things you can do is listen to your customers, and one of the worst things you can do is listen to your customers. It's both, right? But the idea of okay, stop participating in the fruitless negative conversations that happen online, and especially that tend to happen online. Certain spaces are just known for saltiness and toxicity. You don't have to be there. You don't have to listen to those voices, especially if they're not part of your local community, right? They're not your customers. They're just people raging. Don't worry about those people. Pay attention to the people who are enjoying themselves, who really like what you're putting, what kind of experience you're putting into the community. Those customers, take care of them. Focus on them. Tune out some of the noise online. I think most people would probably be a lot happier if they especially like certain things like Facebook and Twitter and whatever, like unplug from those spaces just a little bit more than you probably are right now. And you might find yourself just feeling a little bit better overall about what you're doing. And then maybe it won't be so much of an issue, right? You don't hear the screeching per se.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And like the phone calls will die down. That's the other thing. The people who are like, "You have Lorcana, I hate you." Like those will eventually stop. Don't worry. That's just a couple.
This too shall pass.
Yeah, this too shall pass. That's a really good way to put it. Yeah. No, it's a tough situation, but I feel like the long-term potential is there. It's just we got to get through this initial real bumpy ride.
And it is bumpy, and there are feelings, and we're just gonna get through it, and yeah, and then this will all be something that we can reminisce over in a few years.
Yeah, I hope so. It's funny too because like you mentioned the whole marketing aspect of things, and like your job is to get people in the store. And I was really excited when like Lorcana was first announced and like the hype and people started talking about it. Like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to use this so well to get people into the store. And then it became this like, well, don't even mention it because you do not want to talk about the fact that like I'm going to even carry this product because it's already sold out. I don't want it. I don't want anyone to know that I have it.
Yeah.
It could have backfired. Like this could have been the best. Like this could have been so great for getting a whole new community, a whole new base of customers into like every single game store. People who had never heard of a game store would be coming in to play Lorcana, right? And we just couldn't put it off. Couldn't do it. Hopefully that's something
will. And it will, and it will. It's just, not today. Not today. This is one of those things where we're just gonna have to. We kind of just, we're talking about games, right? And so sometimes when you're playing games, you're getting L's and you're getting W's. And today we're getting an L. And that how we respond to that is like one of the things that gaming teaches us. And so today is a day where we just have to smile and shake on it and know that there's gonna be another one tomorrow. We're gonna be maybe then.
Yeah, no, I think that is a great piece of advice. And that's one of the things that I feel as a gamer has been something extremely beneficial. Like that's the reason why, some parents put their kids into baseball and sports, right? Like it's not so much the fitness and the friendship and the strategy, like all of that's great, but it's training and teaching people like how to respond to loss, right? You're gonna lose. You are gonna lose in life. You're gonna lose frequently. You're gonna fail often. There's gonna be things that you just do not go your way. But how you respond is like one of the foundational skills that will lead to success later on, right? Either, I got beat up. I lost my soccer game. I'm never playing again, right? Well, that's one way of responding, but you're never gonna get better if you do that.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's one of the key lessons of playing games is that you learn how to lose. You learn how to win in the future, hopefully. And I think, right now it's not great, but hopefully Ravensburger, they learned their lesson. Hopefully everybody else, learns, okay, well, then maybe this is what we can do in the future. They lessons learned, hopefully will lead to great things in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Hopefully. Yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about? We've been rolling on Lorcana for like a good hour and a bit now.
Well, I just probably kind of, I don't know. As long as I'm here, I'd probably just say something like, we got a lot going on in Phoenix, Arizona. We got a lot of game stores, and I think that I'm very fortunate in a sense to be marketing in such a competitive environment, because our environment is very competitive now. It's a big city, and we have a lot of stores, and a lot of stores jostling up against each other, and it's great to see what everybody's doing. And you should come out to Phoenix. If you're a game store owner, you should come out to Phoenix to check us out. come and of course come check out Authority Games in Tempe and in Mesa. And if you're in town, reach out to me at Authority Games and let's do lunch and talk or whatever. That sounds great. That sounds fun. But check out what we're doing here in Phoenix. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gamers Guild, huge online game store that's in Phoenix. They're in our backyard. We got a lot of really cool local shops, like cool mom and pop shops doing interesting stuff. And then it's my understanding that we got one of them Mox boarding houses or whatever they're called coming in. And
one of those guys.
One of those things. So yikes. We'll see how that goes, you know. But it's an interesting environment. And if you're looking, I travel, and when I go to different cities, I like to check out the game stores. And I think that because of the sort of unique forces that we have here in Phoenix in terms of just the unbelievably hot summers and the unbelievably cheap, up until very recently, real estate, we have some just absolutely amazing game stores that are and games that have to then compete with each other. So so come on down to Phoenix, Arizona. Come on down to Phoenix, Arizona, where it all goes down. Check us out. Check us out, world.
Yeah, see what's happening.
It's cracking.
Yeah, and I know a lot of store owners maybe lament the fact that there are so many other stores in existence nowadays. Like it's a boom for game stores. It seems like, right?
There's a boom going on, but you know what? A rusty knife can't draw fresh blood. So
iron sharpens iron.
Yeah. So I mean, we're capitalists. We're doing capitalism here, and that requires competition. So don't. And just this goes back to the winning thing. Like step your game up. You know, this is a great opportunity to step your game up. This is a great opportunity to get inspired and look around at what is going on in your area and think about what it takes to be the best. And I'm not saying be like some Cobra Kai guy and try and run everybody else out of business. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying if you run the best game store in your area, the other game stores in your area will take note, and then they will become better, and then you have to become better, and then what happens? Then you have amazing game stores. I mean, what a switch! What a switch that is from the dialogue of just a few years ago of game stores are like rancid hives of scum and villainy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, what a switch. I love it. Now's a great time.
I think there's certainly the argument of like too many in one space can be problematic. That can be an issue. But I think also like just imagine if, you know, you've got a really big metro area and there's too many, you know, to quote some people, game stores in one area. But what if all of them are doing a great job? Every store is an excellent experience and has a community that they're building around it. You are amplifying, like you are benefiting from their efforts as well. As a store owner, you can benefit from everyone else being better, right? You can also work together. Like, not everybody in the game store space has to like, you know, cut each other's throats or anything like that. We can be lots of friends. There's allies in this business. Like there's lots of ways to do this where everybody can win and win more than you could on your own potentially. Like you don't have to, you know, like I feel like having a generally more exposure of the hobby to a wider group of people and everybody doing it better, generally speaking, like everyone's kind of figuring it out. I think game stores on the whole standards have gone up over the last few years. I think that's only a good thing for the most part. And I feel like everyone, if we kind of get through this period of tumultuous change, I think it could be really good on the other end. I think, you know, 1 year from now, we might be having a very different conversation as to how things played out and how people feel about certain conditions.
100%. I agree.
Well, I think on that positive note, I think it's a great place. To
end on a high note. End on a high note, like George Costanza.
Exactly. End on the positive note. Let's call it an episode. Really appreciate you coming on again.
Thanks for having me.
Conversation again. Hopefully we can figure this out with the other guys at some point in the near future, because that'd be great too.
Yeah, well, I'm available. I'm sorry I've been in and out. I'm doing my best. I'll just stay at me, and we'll do this again soon. I can't wait.
We will 100%. Before we go, where can people connect with you? Give them one more plug to reach out to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Brendan Carrion. I do marketing at Authority Games in Tempe and Mesa, Arizona, and I run our Instagram. So if it's just at Authority Games, and that's ATHORIA. If that might not be the most intuitive thing. So it's Authority Games on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. I also manage that community. And you can reach me there. You can also reach me at my own Instagram, which is at Death by Roleplaying. So yeah, hit me up. Hit me up anytime. I love to talk about this stuff. So hit me up.
Awesome. All right, we'll talk to everybody again in the next episode. We'll see you again next time.